So, how do you know that you're a generational chain breaker? First, you see and recognize the truth. That's the first step, and that's often the hardest, right? Recognizing the dysfunction, calling abuse abuse. That's often very hard. Things that have been allowed to go on in your family line for generations. People won't often call it abuse because it's been normalized. But you're willing to see it as abuse. You're willing to recognize it as abuse. Poverty mindsets. You see it, you know something's wrong. Self-sabotage. You see it, you know something's wrong. Toxic relationships. Settling for less than your best. Repeating patterns of brokenness. Addiction. These are things that generational chain breakers, they see it. They see the pattern. They see that we're 3 or 4 generations in and nothing's changed. This doesn't feel right. This doesn't look right to me. This is not how I want to live my life. This is not what I want my children to live with, or my nieces, or my nephews, or my cousins to live with. They recognize the truth first. The second item, generational chain breakers will speak the truth. They stand in it. They love it. They can speak it with love, with grace, with patience, and if called for, an appropriate forgiveness. But they speak the truth. They don't deviate from it. They don't back down from it. That's one of the hardest things, right? When you are someone who notices toxic dynamics within your family of origins, bloodline. When you've noticed these patterns and you decide to speak on it, you have people who will try to convince you over and over again that what you see as abnormal is normal. They'll call up, down, and left, right. But it's to protect what they believe is the family. It's so that they don't have to see the truth for themselves. That's not your responsibility. For your sanity's sake, you're going to have to live in the truth, recognize it, stand on it. You don't have to be aggressive about the truth. The truth speaks for itself. But don't allow yourself to be gaslit. If you know something and a pattern of behavior is toxic, it's abusive, it's dysfunctional, and it produces bad fruit, it's okay to speak that. It's okay to receive that in yourself and to believe that. And don't deviate from the truth. When you can recognize that this is the 3rd or 4th generation in, and we have had a pattern of abuse in this family, and all it seems to do is produce more abusers. When you're the person who can call that out, and more, abusers and victims of abuse and survivors of abuse, when you can call that out and you can separate from it, you are a chain breaker. You are potentially saving lives when you can speak that truth and live in that truth. The world needs more people who are brave enough to stand in the truth of their family dynamics and go the other way and be a light for those that come behind them. You have to be willing to stand in the truth. It's very difficult. You will often be villainized for it. You may be isolated for it, but you will be better for it. So that's number 2, is first a willingness to see the truth, then a willingness to speak the truth. And then third, it's a willingness to do something different, right? Get healing. If you come from a family that is averse to therapy, someone has to change that pattern. Someone has to be willing to go to either a licensed counselor, church, counseling, wherever there's trusted expertise there, and be able to get help to be able to break up the dynamic. It can be scary if you've never done it before. If you come from a family that, demonizes getting outside help and external help, it can be hard to be the person that says, I'm going for it. I'm going to do this. But you're not just doing it for yourself. You're doing it for those around you. You're doing it for younger than you, and you're doing it for some of the older that may be watching you and need to see you go first. You don't know who you'll deliver and who you'll set free by being willing to take that first step. And once you've recognized what these patterns are, what these shadows are in your family. Then you implement these things. If it's addiction, you do the work that it takes to break that addiction. You go to AA, you go to whatever meetings, you go to rehab, you do the hard work. You take it to God and you do the hard work of separating from those patterns. If it's toxic relationships, you're willing to really take a look at any relationship that you're in, see the level of toxicity and walk away if you need to. You're willing to do that work. That's the third thing. Are you willing to do the work? The fourth, for a generational chain breaker, are you willing to walk away? There are going to be certain family dynamics, family friends, and family patterns that you just are not going to be able to tolerate anymore. Some people you're going to have to separate from completely for your mental health, for your emotional health, for your stability. If you spend time with these people and then you go home to your new family, right? You've married, you had children, you go home to your other relationships, and you bring that toxicity from your family of origin and you bring that into those dynamics. That's not fair to those people either. That's not fair to your children. So you'll have to make the decision whether to completely sever ties with someone. And this is not an easy decision. Go to God, go to a licensed counselor, absolutely. But you'll have to make the decision. Some people you may end up severing the connection. Some people you'll just have to love from a distance and feed them with a long spoon. You see them occasionally, you talk to them on the phone occasionally, and you have hard boundaries, articulated boundaries that you have with them of things that you will and will not tolerate or indulge in. One of the most important things in dealing with being a generational chain breaker is that you will have people who will convince you that the things that happened to you, the things that you endured were your fault or that they were okay. That is dangerous. That is so dangerous. If you have someone in your life that knows that you've suffered some kind of abuse, trauma, and makes excuses for that abuse, trauma, or even worse, tells you why you deserved it, I highly encourage you to separate from that person now. Because what tends to happen is we tend to internalize that narrative. And then even worse, we internalize it and then we act on that belief that we are worthy of abuse. We are worthy of mistreatment. And that can be farther from the truth. That's nothing that God ever wanted you to believe, not for a second. And anyone who ever makes you feel like any abuse that you endured was your fault, or it was okay, or there's a good reason for it, I highly encourage you to be separate from that person. Whether they mean to or not, it's not going to produce good fruit in you. And you have to protect yourself. You have to protect your mental and emotional health and well-being. You have to protect your journey. You have to protect your relationship with God, your children. There are generations and descendants who are counting on you to make these hard decisions. There are so many people I've seen, even the Bible with Timothy, right? His mother and grandmother being praying women. There's so many people that are here and are successful because of praying grandmothers. You matter. Your devotion to self-improvement, to your relationship with God, it matters. These changes that you make today, next week, next month, they are going to affect someone else's life down the road in a really impactful and blessed way. So it's not easy being a generational chain breaker. People may even try to convince you you're no generational chain breaker, but let your fruit be what speaks for itself. I'm rooting for you. Till next time.